Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hello, podcast listeners. Today we have a special treat for you from one of our coaches, Rocío Caballero-Gill. Now, what you're going to hear is the audio from a weekly live video series that we used to do in our Facebook group called Level Up Live. So you might hear Rocío talk about upcoming events and things. Just know that this episode was so good that we wanted to pull it out of the archives of the Facebook group and make sure that it got airtime on the podcast. Rocío is going to be talking about one of my very favorite topics, how to find time to write. Enjoy.
Today, I wanted to talk to you about a phrase that has been popping in my head for a little bit. And I wonder how many of you say this phrase too. I need to find time to something. In my case, and I put it on the title, I need to find time to write. Really, this applies to any verbs that you want to use, not just the writing. But from my personal and professional experience right now, seeing some of the clients that we work with, and some of my colleagues today, right now, is just such an intense time still. And we've been on that for a little while, right? For a long while, many of us. And so, whether it's because of everything that we need to do, there are a variety of reasons for that to be so much these days. And there's so many things that we think about, that we need to do, that we want to do, that we must do, not always matching, right? Not our needs and our wants are not necessarily the things that we want to do or must do for our calendar to be fulfilled, for the list to be clicked, and yada, yada, yada. And I just wanted to say, let's just pause and breathe for just a little bit, just one deep breath in and out. And with this live, what I hope to offer to you was just a bit of perspective and also some strategies that I have seen work with some of the clients that we work with, also from colleagues and even my personal experience, because like I said, we all have so much to deal with. And in my personal case, I'm not only speaking to you as a coach, I'm also speaking to you as an academic, mother of two. I was going to say Peruvian. And sometimes the language component comes into play because, you're tired, you get confused with languages. I also now live with 3 grandparents at home, not just 2 like I used to. I live also with my partner and the kids. So we're on this multicultural, multi-generational home. And to make it work, we all have so much. And that is just to give you an example. And of course, I have a chronic illness. So that's just to add to the mix. We all have so much to do. And we want to start with just breaking down this phrase that I put in the title, how to find time to, and I put right, but you can really use it for anything else. And I want to break it down with you so that with those 3 broken down pieces, we can make some progress. The 3 pieces that I want to break it down into are going to be the word find, how to find time to write, the word time. And also I want to add this idea of acknowledging barriers. And actually want to start with that one, because that's the one where everything just really starts to fall into place. We have to acknowledge the barriers that we have at hand with all of these things that are in our minds, in our lives, in our hearts that are just clouding and making things a little bit too much. Again, breathe. And acknowledging these barriers are going to help us really figure out what the next steps are going to be, which are going to be different for every single one of us, right? So by really taking into account just a simple thought of how do I find time to something, acknowledge the barriers embedded in that particular phrase. If it's for writing, then, what specific barriers are preventing you from actually having the time to write, or for even starting somewhere or continuing, whatever the case may be. You can also figure out based on those barriers and acknowledging and actually putting a label on them, you can start figuring out who do you need to enlist to ask for help, to get some support. Because truthfully, a lot of times, we think we can do it. We are amazing. Y'all are super, super wonder people there. And the idea is that you don't have to do it all alone. And there are some resources available in many ways. And the question is, how do we even label something as must find a resource for this, even myself, and then go from that step. Acknowledging the barriers can help us better define the boundaries that we need to either put in place or respect or redefine, because sometimes we think we have a barrier, a boundary for this specific thing that can help us tackle this barrier a little. And, sometimes we change up a little bit our definition of that boundary. Some barriers are really not up to us to be able to tackle and address. And so we have to know which ones should we want to take on to allow us to complete a phrase. How do I find time to do something specific? In this case, writing. And also something important is to remember that even acknowledging the barriers in itself, not even doing anything about them, just putting a label and saying this is a major barrier to the writing or any activity that you're doing. Starting to reflect on that and what that really means is going to require some time to decompress, because a lot of times, just thinking and then experiencing some of these barriers are going to be so tiring. So you kind of want to know what kind of additional resources you need to really not be as tired by it or not be as bummed about it, right? And some things you can, some things you cannot address. So considering that component is also very important. Just to give you an example and to wrap up this first part of 3 of how to tackle that phrase. Acknowledging barriers, for example, say, I'm the only woman of color, and this particular month I'm asked left and right to give some ideas about specific topics. Some people want to pick my brain, some others want me to be part of a committee. And, of course, that means endless meetings with specific people and so on and so forth. And so figuring out how to define my boundaries for both the time and the energy are going to help me really restrict how many of those things, activities, I'm going to say yes or no to. A caring and respectful no is actually more meaningful. It has a lot more impact too than an empty yes. And that is not only for us saying that word, but also for those receiving that word. All right, so let's go back to the second part of this 3 pieces that I'm using to break down this phrase, how to find more time to write. The word find. The word find is actually kind of tricky, because as soon as you put the phrase and you say it or you write it or you see it anywhere, how do I find time to blah? That idea of finding time already defines how important that activity is. It may not be intentional. It may not be what we really mean, but it already starts putting, saying, oh, you need to find time. So that means maybe it's not as important as other things. It's not as urgent. It doesn't have a deadline. It doesn't align or has any relevance to our goals or values. And maybe it does, but we're just saying, I need to find time to this. Or I really, really need to find, however way you say it, that word finding is going to immediately cue us into, if there's time, I'm going to figure out how to put it in there. And if that's the intention, that's great. And that's what you want. And that is perfect. The thing is that if you, however, say, actually is something that really matters to me, something that is important, something that has some urgency, something that aligns with my goals and with my values, then you're not really trying to find the time, right? You really want to make sure that you protect that time, that time is just there and that you have it to do and use as you please, whether if it's just to take a nap. You need it. So it's going to be there. You're not just going to find it if there's a chance. And so that's the difference, in using the word find and how that already puts an idea in a way when we communicate it for others to respect that activity, for ourselves to respect that activity. And it may sound a little silly, but try it. I challenge you to try it. Just 1 week of saying, yes, I'm not just going to find it. I'm going to protect it. I'm going to create it. These are the boundaries around this particular thing. I'm no longer finding. I'm actually making sure it happens within the constraints and the barriers that I've acknowledged, of course. So for instance, say it's a month when you really want to focus on writing a specific piece, then, if it's a term or a month or, a semester, whatever you want to use to break it down, and it really is a priority, then you want to make sure that you protect that a little bit. You're not just finding the time, you're making sure that you have it safe and protected. And so with that, I just wanted to start transitioning to the third and last part of this breaking down of the sentence. How do I find time to? Because you're protecting, you're saving that in your calendar, in your rhythm, whichever method you use. But it's not just the time, right? You're protecting that space, that time, and that energy. And that's the third component, the word time. The word time to me really is important. And sometimes realistically, that's what we have to use and budget and see how we use and what we put our energy into. And at the same time, we want to be careful in how we talk about those two, because sometimes you may have all the time, but you're not really giving it the energy that you need. And so therefore, you don't make the progress that you expected. And then you don't feel good about what you did in that time. And then you come back or not feeling all bummed. And the idea is that we start transitioning and thinking this word time as more than just that. It's also the energy, right? It's the energy. And everything that I mean by that is, from our predisposition, when we go into this space, say it's the writing, how do I find time to write? This energy that we have in the predisposition when we go into a writing cubicle, table, wherever it is that we're going to write, and how we walk away from that space, not just in time, but also, in space. So if we walk away feeling like we did a good job, then that's going to keep us coming back. And the only way to know if we're going to feel that, and if we know that we did a good job, is if we set some milestones. We kind of want to have a realistic plan, more or less, because sometimes when we're starting, we don't even know how long things are going to take, right? So if you say, all right, I'm going to sit down and write from 10 to 11 this day, don't just go in and say that. If the intention is to say, okay, 10 to 11, but in the first 10 minutes, I'm going to define what I'm doing the next 50. And I'm going to realistically set out to accomplish these milestones. Then when you walk away, you're going to say, all right, I did this one and this one. I didn't finish this one, but that's the one that I'm going to start next time. And so you walk away feeling like you actually make the best of that time and energy. And you feel energized because you're like, okay, I don't have any time. The whole semester is just full of things. I don't have time, but I do have this 1 hour every week. And that 1 hour I cherish by really using the best of that time and energy. And so again, it's not just time, it's also energy. I want you to reconsider that. Time is finite, energy is too. Coming from someone with a chronic disorder, it really is. And the best for you is going to be when you walk away feeling like you really invested that energy where you need it and the way you need it, on the things you wanted, on the people you wanted. So just to wrap it up, because already it's been a few minutes, in this live we made time, thank you so much, to break down this phrase, how do I find time to write? And again, you can replace that word write with any other verbs. And the idea is that we talk about, how our use of words is going to matter and set us up for what's going to happen next. Find already gives the important, gives a specific importance to the activity, and however important it is, whether it is or not, it really is up to us to define how important the activity is and whether or not we are finding the time, if there is some time. The second thing that I talked about was time, and how it's not just about the time, but it's also about the energy. So we kind of want to start reconsidering that point. And the last thing that I touched upon, actually the first that I started with in this level of life, was acknowledging barriers. I just want to put this out there. We are not all using the same boat. It's a phrase that I hear on, every so often. Some of us have rafts, some of us have like canoes, some of us have some people have like a big fancy old cruise ship. And acknowledging that is already going to help us figure out the next steps. So that was pretty much it for today. If you watch this live and you're curious to gain more tools to actually, and resources to address some of these issues of finding and time and the barriers and all of these, you can check out one of our programs. Right now, we are enrolling for our Elevate program, and this is typically geared for mid to late career academics who feel frustrated but are ready to take the next step into something bigger. Yes, I'm reading, so I don't forget, say the wrong thing. But the important thing to know is that we are enrolling for Elevate that starts next year in February, and we are giving an info session early October. So if you want to check it out and figure out what the whole program is about and how much it costs, how many hours you would have to invest, hours and energy and time, then you want to come to this, you want to sign up for this event. All right. That was all from me. Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be back and not see your faces, but at least, see your comments if you comment here. And I will see you next time, and be safe, be well, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye now.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.